Najarian.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Mayor Quintero.
Here.
Roll call for successor agency. Board members Friedman.
Here.
Manukian. Najarian.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Chair Quintero.
Here. And we have your report.
Agenda for the October 23rd, 2012 joint public meeting of the successor agency, then City Council, was posted on Thursday, October 18, 2012, on the bulletin board outside City Hall. Item before you is Director of Community Development regarding proposed amendments to Title 12 of the Glendale Municipal Code relating to the establishment of paseos. That 1A is an ordinance for introduction. And there is another item following this one on the agenda.
All right. Mr. Ochoa.
Yes, sir. We have these two items that are actually very closely related together, both dealing with the paseo that would connect Brand Boulevard to Central Park via the Mona Paseo, as we've termed it. Mr. Lanzafame will give you the overview of both items. Is that right, Phil?
Yes, if you'd like to take them together, we can, or one at a time. The first item is really, what we're asking for is to place a mechanism within our code that would allow for these paseos or passageways from one place to another to be considered right-of-way. What that would allow us to do is then to open onto those paseos either with windows or doors. The City Attorney's Office has long been trying to work on this also for news racks and outdoor dining, and so this amendment that we're asking you would take care of all of those. Again, it's a mechanism that would add the term paseo as right-of-way, which would then allow openings at property lines onto that area. There is staff from planning where in our downtown specific plan we have identified areas of potential paseos. As Mr. Ochoa alluded to, we'll be talking about one just south of the Museum of Neon Art building that's the subject of the next item. The Chess Park could become a paseo. There are other passageways that might be developed in the future that would benefit from this. So staff from planning is here to talk about those. Engineering to talk about right-of-way issues. Certainly the City Attorney's Office is here. I think one of the questions that I had asked is, how does it actually get designated as a paseo? And you would, as a regular item, would come back to you when you accept improvements on that piece of property from yourself. You would designate it at that time paseo. So the City Council would have an opportunity to see that. This action is merely to put the mechanism into the code. With that, your staff's team is prepared to answer any questions, and then we can move into the second item.
Any questions on the general concept?
Again, so the main opportunities or benefits that this would do is permit dining in the right-of-way. It would permit windows to open out into the right-of-way. It would permit news racks.
And also circulation as well. I mean, where these...
If they were put in there.
I see. And currently we have no such designation.
We do not have a paseo designation.
Technically, how do we sort of decide the encroachment on the public? These would be public right-of-ways. Some would, others wouldn't, or we're talking about all public right-of-ways?
They would be right-of-way. That's the purpose.
Right. So technically, how would we decide in terms of some of the furnishings, umbrellas, chairs, tables, planters, and so forth?
Those would come to you as part of a project that we're designing. When it gets built, you would accept the improvements, and at that time you would designate it for sale. Then it would be considered right-of-way, and you could do things like open windows on. You could also designate it any time earlier.
Be an encroachment.
But I'm thinking in terms of that restaurants or cafes, whatever, don't wind up with lots of extra square footage to the detriment of passerbys.
We would be evaluating each one of those really as an encroachment permit on a case-by-case basis, because if we have light standards or planters or trees or anything that might impede that right-of-way, we would have to take that into account as well.
Because I have noticed, and I'm all in favor of sidewalk dining and so forth, but I have noticed that there are some restaurants, and I won't name, lowered. I mean, they've just basically taken over the sidewalk, the kind of things that have been put up, sort of make it a permanent structure that's encroaching on the sidewalk, so.
I understand. To specifically each of these permits, when they ask for it, they would have to give a plan. And that gets approved, so you would measure from light standards to make sure there's ADA clearance. If those start to creep, we have other ways to deal with that.
And if they're more permanent, we would look at them more as license agreements versus encroachment agreements.
Any other questions? Mr. Weaver?
All of these sidewalk dinings, moving in and out and stuff, they all obtain permits, right?
Outside dining permits, yes, and
All to our
insurance.
knowledge.
Yes.
They're supposed to.
Yeah, because I've asked staff to look into one on North Brent. I haven't heard
Yes.
anything for 2 or 3 weeks.
I believe that the property owner met with
Yes, I
Director
understood
Hassan.
that. I haven't heard anything yet. What's going on? They just moved in to their current location. Now, do we give them more of an opportunity by creating paseos?
No.
I don't think so, especially not in that particular circumstance.
Because I've been against this, but just wanted to clarify, this puts it in the code, but every instance where paseo might be created, the city council is the one that says yes or no.
To the paseo, the creation of the paseo, yes.
So not
Every single
every...
one.
Correct.
This just puts it in the code, period.
That's correct, sir.
First time we're going to see it is at the neon.
Is the next item, yes. Well, there is a paseo that's identified there.
That's the genesis of this coming to us now.
It is, but it is also applicable to other areas.
Oh, yeah, I know, I got the map.
Yeah.
We've talked about this. Okay.
Okay, so this is a ordinance for introduction. I'll be happy to introduce the ordinance. Next, please.
Next up, we have Mr. Lonzafame for the second half of the discussion.
And allow me to read the item into the record, Mr. Chair. 2 is Director of Community Development regarding renovation of 216 South Brand Boulevard and Central Park Paseo in connection with Successor Agency spec number GSA 3461. 2A is Council motion approving minimum pedestrian passageway improvement plan located at 222 South Brand Boulevard to be funded through a Public Works Street Reconstruction Program and/or Park Development Impact Fees. 2B is agency resolution adopting plans and specs and directing city clerk to advertise for bids. And C is agency motion approving change order for Shimoda Design in the amount of $75,400. And I apologize, I didn't realize that we would introduce the last item so quickly. There was, I believe, one card that was submitted from the public on that item. I don't know if we heard from that gentleman or...
No, the only card I have is for the paseos.
Which was the previous item.
On the general, oh, is that right? I assumed it was the Mona. All right, excuse me, I have one speaker, James DiPietro.
Good afternoon. Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council and Glendale Successor Agency. My name is James DiPietro. Our family's commercial real estate firm, Frank DiPietro & Sons, owns the retail and office building at 224 to 226 South Brand Boulevard. Our property is adjacent to the proposed Central Park Paseo, and we'd like to voice our support for the City Council's adoption of the proposed ordinance amending the Glendale Municipal Code regarding the establishment of the paseos. As stated in the staff report, building openings at the property line are not permitted unless the property is abutting a public right-of-way. By declaring the proposed Central Park Paseo as a public right-of-way, it would allow for the possibility of adjacent property, including our building, to add openings such as windows, doors, or pedestrian access, thus creating a more dynamic pedestrian passageway that will better serve area visitors. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All's well that ends well.
Very well put. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council and the Successor Agency, the report for you, the item before you today, really has 3 parts. The first is the building itself that we own, the bid spec for that. The second is a discussion of the paseo that would go to the south that goes along with that project. And then finally, as we said in the title, that there's a change order request. In March of 2011, the redevelopment agency, then redevelopment agency, approved a ground lease with the Museum of Neon Art. As part of that, the agency would be responsible to renovate the building. As part of that approval, you authorized or approved a design and authorized staff to start the preparation of a bid package that would do what we call owner's work. That included structural improvements, fire protection improvements of the building, ADA, upgrades to the building's roofing and drainage, plumbing and electrical systems, and then also a paseo openings that could open up onto a paseo to the south. As we noted earlier today, in June of 2011, the Dissolution Act was passed and became effective and put a halt on some things until we got that process straightened out. We have included this obligation in our recognized obligation payment schedules, 1, 2, and 3. The Department of Finance each time has recognized it as an enforceable obligation. We came back to the redevelopment agency, the successor agency, in May of 2012, again to ask to permission to go forward, and the successor agency voted to authorize staff to prepare that bid package. That is now complete. You have seen the design. It is included as a rendering in your packet. What we have done in this bid package is we have provided for an allowance on a minimal paseo. The paseo is important for two reasons. It does, as Mr. DiPietro just mentioned, it does allow us to the buildings to the north and south to activate that paseo, but it also acts as access for people that are coming from the commercial side, the Americana, to enter through that paseo into the more civic complex of the ARC, the Central Park, and the library, which is part of the master plan that the agency had looked at a couple of years back. It has been, the package has been prepared. We have allowed for a scaled back paseo. We also have talked to the Department of Finance and our legal counsel. We believe that once we get finding of completion, this is a provision that was included in the most recent bill of 1484. Once we get that, we're going to be able to use our bond proceeds and we'll be able to build the paseo that you originally approved, the more robust design, the redo of the parking lot in the back, and some of the underground utilities that are necessary to effectuate that. We don't think that can happen, though, until the spring of next year. We believe that we're on track to do it, but it won't happen until spring of next year. So in the meantime, we have this allowance. Just in case we're not able to do that, we still provide for a paseo. And finally, we had retained a designer, Joey Shimoda, to do the design work. Because of some of the nature of changing the design to with a stop and start, both from the state and working with an older building, we found that we had some additional work that we needed Mr. Shimoda to do. So we are asking for a change order in the amount of $40,400. We did not have a contingency in that original contract. We would like to add a contingency so as we get into construction, if we have the need for architectural services, we can use Mr. Shimoda. We're asking for an amount of $35,000, bringing the total change order to $75,400. Again, we have staff from most of the departments involved in this project if you have questions, but we are recommending your approval of that bid package and authorization to go out to bid.
Will council be able to weigh in at the time when we decide if we're going to be able to do the larger or the smaller paseo?
Yes.
It seems to me that if we're going to do the larger one, we'll do it, but I just don't want us to start construction on the smaller paseo without us knowing that, having some input.
Well, I think that the smaller one is not designed or will be constructed in such a way that it's exclusive of the more bells and whistles that may flow depending on the notice of completion, if that timing comes to pass.
One of the reasons we're here now is because the building will take longer than the rest of the project. So we could even start construction, and we don't need to make that decision until we believe in the spring. And so we'll have plenty of time to be able to get our finding of completion, to come back to you and do that and make sure that it all comes together at the same time. We won't build the smaller project with that question of, can we still build the bigger one, left unanswered.
And what does get constructed would be so plain that it doesn't preclude anything else from happening. Some of that flat work that needs to happen as part of the building, it really wouldn't be exclusive. So the short answer is yes. You would be able to come back and take a look at what ultimately is constructed there.
And where is the central library reconfiguration now with all of these?
That is going gangbusters with staff right now in terms of putting together the designer with our project management staff, library staff, and we will. What is the ETA on the design?
We would like to have the design back to you in probably March, so that it coincides with the new market tax credits that you approved for us to go out for. The library is in a bit of the same boat with the bond proceeds. We need to get that finding of completion. If all of our timing works, it's all spring of next year when we get that finding, when we know about new market tax credits, and when the design is done.
So just to be clear for the public, the Mona building renovation and the Mona deal, well, the Mona building renovation is not coming from city financing, correct? It's coming from Successor agency.
That is correct,
Funds.
and former redevelopment agency tax increment.
Now, their rent's going to be paid to the Successor agency then?
That is correct.
Right, so it's revenue neutral for the city of Glendale, for the most
Yes.
part.
I mean,
It was,
we'll share
it was
a piece.
originally configured as a redevelopment project. It's moving forward as a former redevelopment project.
Right, but it's not taking money out of our general
That's
fund.
correct.
It is not.
Okay, Mr. Weaver.
Okay, let's clarify. One, I don't support the Neon Museum. I never have. But this is to build out that shell. And if the Neon Museum never showed up, we would have an improved structure that we could lease. That's correct? Totally independent.
That's correct.
So what I'm doing here is approving the shell for this design with the mermaid, what do you call it, the diver on the top of the building, which could be for anything inside, correct?
Yes, if the museum did not occupy.
If, and I understand it's an enforceable obligation. Okay. And I've supported that part. Paseo in this case then allows for the DiPietros to open onto the Paseo because it's now public right-of-way. Is that right? And allows people to walk through that area if it's a Paseo, which we identify as public right-of-way. It also allows development up to the alley
That's correct, sir.
because it'd be now a Paseo.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I can support it. Now, this is what I mean. This is the first example of Paseo. We don't have many areas like this in Glendale at this time where we could do anything like this. I can see the value this time in creating public right-of-way off the alley for the pedestrians and the DiPietros. Makes sense. So I'll support that. Thank you.
Okay, I support the concept. As a matter of fact, over the weekend, I had some out-of-town guests, and we walked around after an enormous meal at Rafi's Kebab. We had to walk. So we walked around the area, and as you stand at the Americana and look across the street, all I could do was visually paint a picture of what is going to be taking place there, including the DiPietro's building, which I said development was going to be changing that building that's been shuttered for so long. So this is going to be a big boost to Brand Boulevard. And as Mr. Weaver mentioned, the shell that we're building, this really beautiful building that's going to be rehabbed, that can be used by anyone. Hopefully Mona will have a long stay here in the city of Glendale. In fact, when it comes to an end, if it does, then someone else will step into a totally rehabilitated building. It's a pretty wide paseo. It's actually approximately 48 feet. So it's going to be a not only pedestrian, but also visually. You will be able to look all the way through to the library and to the Central Park. That alley and parking lot behind Brand next to Central Park will be redone. So all in all, it's really going to be a big boost to that portion of the downtown. I like this kind of interim plan, but I just wonder about the 3 trees that are going in the middle of the pink trumpet trees that are going in the middle of the space. It seems like that might keep kind of activities from taking place, or I don't know. I mean, I thought it was supposed to be open so that Mona could do some. Is there a?
And do the trumpet trees drop a lot of trumpets?
Yeah.
Members
that
of
was
the
my next
agency, the trumpet trees were selected mainly because the idea was to continue some of the improvements directly across the street to the west. The trumpet tree is what's on Caruso Avenue, and the theme is to continue those along to the east side and then potentially include it in front of the library improvements on the back. The trees help define the area where Mona could actually spell out into having evening parties or evening events or gallery openings. Because it is going to be a legally dedicated a paseo and a dedicated right-of-way, we need to provide a designated public passageway from Brand Boulevard to the backside, to the east side. So by the design of the handicap, the ADA ramp, and the landscaping and the trees, we are better defining the space to be used by Mona for their activities.
So between, it's sort of in the middle of the 48-foot width. So basically you're saying to the north of those trees, that would be the defined space for Mona, and the other side could be used for...
Right, based on their programming needs.
And these trumpet trees, do they drop a lot of trumpets?
No, actually, they were selected specifically for their safety for pedestrian use, and also allows. I know we keep on referring to this as the mini or the skinny version of the overall improvements, but there are specific elements that are reminiscent of the previous design. The location of these three trees are. Harken back to the old design, as well as if you recall, the plumber. I don't think we have an image, but the old plumber sign is also anchored and sort of spills into a landscape area versus a pool or a water element that was proposed before.
Okay. Well, and hopefully we're going to build a more elaborate paseo. I think the space deserves it, quite frankly. The other plantings, I think, are great. I've used aloe in my planting just recently, the agave. I've also used that. So I'm glad I'm at the forefront of landscape design, as usual.
We're trying to set an example of urban drought-tolerant landscaping here.
They're working great. As a matter of fact, they're looking really good. Anyway, I'm very happy with it. I think we're going in the right
I have
direction.
2 more questions.
We
Any estimate on maintenance cost? That'll be city, right, general fund?
That would be through the city, or possibly, depending on the level of maintenance, through the CPD, but that would have to be discussed with that board.
Okay, so we haven't got a figure yet.
Not at this point. It depends on, I think, ultimately, we value engineer what ultimately is built there. And having to take in maintenance costs is a very good question.
Because they're going to have to blow off the site occasionally. I don't know from,
Power washing and everything else.
yeah, a lot of foot traffic.
Okay.
Second, the Central Park area, the design you're working on, does that include underground parking, or is that a later?
At this point, it does not, because there's no funding.
It's just surface.
We won't put anything on it that can't be removed for underground parking, put it that way.
Okay, any other comments? Do I have a motion?
Second?
Roll call.
Is this on A, B, and C?
A, B, and C.
No, it's a
One's
council
council
motion
and
at
two are
2A,
agency.
and then agency, successor agency resolution at 2B, and agency motion at C. So
Can be.
B and C could be taken together by the successor agency.
Motion is on what?
Okay, I'll move B and C for the agency.
Second?
Roll call?
Roll call for council motion. Council members Friedman,
Yes.
Menuchyan, Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Quintero.
That was the, I
Yes.
thought we moved B and C.
No, that was for the council, right? And then now is the boards. Now it's for a successor agency.
The first
C.
successor.
Now you
This
need
is
2A.
yes. Board members Friedman,
Yes?
Menuchyan, Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Chair Quintero.
Yes.
We
There
just
was,
did-
there
we
was,
just did
I
two
believe
roll
there was a
calls.
motion.
Say, you mixed them up. We did B and C and called it council. But it, B and
Is
C
there
are
any
agency.
further action required?
Was that clear?
Just to clarify that 2A was, that was the most recent motion, that was a council motion. The original motion on B and C was for the successor agency.
Okay.
Move to adjourn?
For the council,
Or council?
who move for the agency?
Second.
We're adjourned for the agency and the council.